Hello, welcome again to I want to say the days every time I'm like today I will say the day and I never know how many days it's been. I'm just like, well, I guess I'll just try to do it and I will never make it because I don't know what day it is. I do know that it's the 3rd of May, but that's it. Uh yeah, so today I've been actually doing I like deep cleaned my whole room. It's glistening. I lit some incense in here to like, I don't know if this is right at all, to just like burn out the bad things. And I don't think that's a real thing, maybe. Um, or if it is a real thing, I'm definitely not doing it right. But yeah, so just that today. Some screenwriting, but it's going slowly and laboriously, as most work does. But other than that, it's an okay day. Well, I mean, it's a really nice day outside, but if you're trapped inside doing a bunch of work, it's less okay. Tomorrow, I'm gonna go pick up our new book. Very exciting. We'll be very careful and cautious. I will obviously be wearing my mask. I will come supplied with several wipes and such, and I've already paid online, so there's no contact needed. They'll just fling the book at me, and I will jump and catch it and then immediately wipe it down. So that's my plan. It's going to be great. All right. What happened yesterday? I think a lot. Yes, I think quite a lot. So, Eleanor, Mom, and Margaret were out for a walk, and they came back, and like Marianne comes running out of the room, and they're like, and she's crying, and so they go into the room, and it's Willoughby. He's like, I have to leave like right now, and they're like, oh, okay, well, like I know that you can't go back to your like aunt's like pretty soon, but you could always come visit us. He's like, I don't know when I'm coming back, so bye, and he runs out, and they're all like, what was that? And then, like, Eleanor and her mom got in this fight because her mom was like, well, they're engaged. And Eleanor's like, when did they tell you this? Did she tell you this? And the mom's like, no. And then Eleanor's like, well, did he tell you this? And mom's like, no, but like they seem like they really like each other, so clearly they're engaged. And Eleanor's like, dude, you cannot think that. Like, what if they're not? Like, they're probably not engaged, Mom. Marianne would have told us. And the mom's like, why are you such a sourpuss all the time? And Eleanor's like, I'm just stating the facts. So things are not well. And Marianne got like super depressed. She is just not doing good. And so Mom's like a little nervous. Everybody's a little nervous about that. So one day she and Eleanor are like out walking. And then across the field, they see this guy coming towards them on a horse. And they're like, and Marianne's like, oh my God, it's Willoughby. And so she like starts running towards him. And Eleanor's like, it's not Willoughby. And it's not Willoughby, but it is Edward Ferrars. And then Marianne's like, watch it. She's like, she feels better because they're like, oh, at least something good is happening for my sister. But then she's like, why are they so cold to each other? What's wrong with them? Like, why aren't they like happier to see each other? But anyways, that's just how they are, because Eleanor and Edward are just very like, I don't know, touch starved. All right, let's do this. Sense and Sensibility, chapter 17. Mrs. Dashwood was surprised only for a moment at seeing him, for his coming at Barton was, in her opinion, of all things the most natural. Her joy and expression of regard long outlived her wonder. He received the kindest welcome from her, and shyness, coldness, reserve could not stand against such a reception. They had begun to fail him before he entered the house, and they were quite overcome by the captivating manners of Mrs. Dashwood. Indeed, a man could not very well be in love with either of her daughters without extending the passion to her, and Eleanor had the satisfaction of seeing him soon become more like himself. His affection seemed to reanimate towards them all, and his interest in their welfare again became perceptible. He was not in spirits, however. He praised their house, admired its prospect, was attentive and kind, but still he was not in spirits. The whole family perceived it, and Mrs. Dashwood, attributing it to some want of liberty in his mother, sat down to table indignant against all selfish parents. "What are Mrs. Ferris's views for you at present, Edward?" said she, when dinner was over and they had drawn round the fire. "Are you still to be a great orator in spite of yourself?" Hello. This is Edward. Um, no, I hope my mother is now convinced that I have no more talents than inclination for public life. But how is your fame to be established? For famous you must be to satisfy all your family, and with no inclination for expense, no affectation for strangers, no profession, and no assurance, you may find it a difficult matter. I shall not attempt it. I have no wish to be distinguished, and I have every reason I hope I never shall. Thank heaven I cannot be forced into genius and eloquence. You have no ambition, I well know. Your wishes are all moderate. Jeez. Um, sorry, I don't know why I lost it for so long. As moderate as those of the rest of the world, I believe. I wish as well as everybody else to be perfectly happy, but like everybody else, it must be in my own way. Greatness will not make me so. Strange if it would, cried Marianne. What have wealth or grandeur to do with happiness? Grandeur has but little, said Eleanor, but wealth has much to do with it. Eleanor, for shame, said Marianne. Money can only give happiness when there is nothing else to give it. Beyond a competence, it can afford no real satisfaction as far as mere self is concerned. Perhaps, said Eleanor, smiling, we may come to the same point. Your competence and my wealth are very much alike, I dare say, and without them, as the world goes now, we shall both agree that every kind of external comfort must be wanting. Your ideas are only more noble than mine. Come, what is your competence? About 1,800 or 2,000 a year, no more than that. Eleanor laughed. 2,000 a year. One is my wealth. I guess how it would end. And yet 2,000 a year is very moderate income, said Marianne. A family cannot well be maintained on a smaller. I am sure I am not extravagant in my demands. A proper establishment of servants, a carriage, perhaps two, and hunters cannot be supported on less. Dear God, woman. Eleanor smiled again to hear her sister describing so accurately their future expenses at Com Magna. Don't know what that is. Hunters, repeated Edward. But why must you have hunters? Everybody does not hunt. Marianne colored, she replied. But most people do. I wish, said Margaret, striking out a novel thought, that somebody would give us all a large fortune apiece. Oh, that they would, cried Marianne, her eyes sparkling with animation and her cheeks glowing with the delight of such imaginary happiness. We are all unanimous in that wish, I suppose, said Eleanor, in spite of the insufficiency of wealth. Oh dear, cried Margaret, how happy I should be! I wonder what I should do with it. Marianne looked as if she had no doubt on the point. I should be puzzled to spend a large fortune myself, said Mrs. Dashwood, if my children were to be rich without my help. You must begin your improvements on this house, observed Eleanor, and your difficulties will soon vanish. What magnificent orders would travel from this family to London, said Edward, in such an event. What a happy day for booksellers, music sellers, and print shops. You, Miss Dashwood, would give a general commission for every new print of merit to be sent to you. And as for Marianne, I know her greatness of soul. There would not be music enough in London to content her. And books, Thomson, Cowper, Scott, she would buy them all over and over again. She would buy up every copy, I believe, to prevent their falling into unworthy hands. And she would have every book that tells her how to admire an old twisted tree. Should you not, Marianne? Forgive me if I am very saucy. Ooh, saucy. But I was willing to show you that I had not forgot our old disputes. That's so sweet. He remembers everything. I'm okay. think it's Marianne. Maybe it's Eleanor. Okay, I think it's Eleanor. I love to be reminded of the past, Edward. Wait, sorry, I meant Marianne. Whether it be melancholy or gay, I love to recall it. And you will never offend me by talking of former times. You are very right in supposing how my money would be spent, some of it at least. My loose cash would certainly be employed in improving my collection of music and books. And the bulk of your fortune would be laid out in annuities on the authors or the heirs. No, Edward, I should have something else to do with it. Perhaps then you would bestow it as a reward on that person who wrote the ablest defense of your favorite maxim, not that no one can ever be in love more than once in their life. For your opinion on that point is unchanged, I presume. Undoubtedly. At my time of life, opinions are tolerably fixed. It is not unlikely that I should see now or hear anything to change them. Marianne is as steadfast as ever, you see, said Eleanor. She is not at all altered. She is only grown a little more grave than she was. Nay, Edward, said Marianne, you need not reproach me. You are not very gay yourself. Why should you think so? He replied with a sigh. But gaiety was never part of my character. Oh, he's depresso. Nor do I think it part of Marianne, said Eleanor. I should hardly call her a lively girl. She is very earnest, very eager in all she does, sometimes talks a great deal and always with animation, but she is not often really merry. I believe you are right, he replied, and yet I have always set her down as a lively girl. I have frequently detected in myself such kind of mistakes, said Eleanor, in a total misapprehension of character in some point or other, fancying people are so much more gay or grave or ingenious or stupid than they really are, and I can hardly tell why or in what the deception originated. Sometimes one is guided by what they say of themselves, and very frequently by what other people say of them, without giving oneself time to deliberate and judge. But I thought it was right, Eleanor, said Marianne, to be guided wholly by the opinion of other people. I thought our judgments were given us merely to be subservient to those of our neighbors. This has always been your doctrine, I am sure. No, Marianne, never. My doctrine has never aimed at the subjection of the understanding. All I have ever attempted to influence has been the behavior. You must not confound my meaning. I am guilty, I confess, of having often wished you to treat our acquaintance in general with greater attention, but when I have advised you to adopt their sentiments or conform to their judgment in serious matters. That was a long sentence, and I didn't know it was ending in a question. You have not been able, then, to bring your sister over to your plan of general civility, said Edward to Eleanor. Do you gain no ground? Quite the contrary, replied Eleanor, looking expressively at Marianne. My judgment, he returned, is all on your side of the question, but I am afraid my practice is much more on your sister's. I never wish to offend, but I am so foolishly shy. I love that I often seem negligent when I am only kept back by my natural awkwardness. I have frequently thought that I must have been intended by nature to be fond of low company. I am so little at my ease among strangers of gentility. What a king. We love him. Marianne has not shyness to excuse any inattention of hers, said Eleanor. She knows her own worth too well for false shame, replied Edward. Shyness is the only effect of a sense of inferiority in some way or other. If I could persuade myself that my manners were perfectly easy and graceful, I should not be shy. But you would still be reserved, said Marianne, and that is worse. Marianne does not mince words. Edward stared. Reserved? Am I reserved, Marianne? Yes, very. I do not understand you, replied he, coloring. Reserved? In what manner? What am I to tell you? What can you suppose? Eleanor looked surprised at his emotion, but trying to laugh off the subject, she said to him, Do you not know my sister well enough to understand what she means? Do you not know that she calls every one reserved who does not talk as fast and admire what she admires as rapturously as herself? Edward made no answer. His gravity and thoughtfulness returned on him in their fullest extent, and he sat for some time silent and dull. Oh, Man, I really connect with, like, nearly every description of Edward. He's just like, "Oh my god, am I reserved?" In his head. In his head, he's like, "Oh my god, I gotta fix some thoughts. Hold on, guys." Oh, wow, I bet he didn't get invited to parties either. That's okay. We have great times with our books. Okay, too much. Chapter 18. Yeah, chapter 18. Don't look at me, Shiv. I'm not here. Um, Eleanor saw with great uneasiness the low spirits of her friend. His visit afforded her but a very partial satisfaction, while his own enjoyment in it appeared so imperfect. It was evident that he was unhappy. She wished it were equally evident that he still distinguished her by the same affection which once she had felt no doubt of inspiring. But hitherto the continuance of his preference seemed very uncertain, and the reservedness of his manner towards her contradicted one moment what a more animated look had intimated the preceding one. He joined her and Marianne. Oh, when this is over, we will party hard. He joined her and Marianne in the breakfast room the next morning before the others were down, and Marianne, who was always eager to promote their happiness as far as she could, soon left them to themselves. But before she was halfway up the stairs, she heard the parlor door open, and turning around, was astonished to see Edward himself coming out. "I am going into the village to see my horses," he said. "Are you not ready for breakfast? As you are not ready for breakfast, I shall be back again presently." Edward returned to them with fresh admiration of the surrounding country. In his walk to the village, he had seen many parts of the valley to advantage, and the village itself in a much higher situation than the cottage afforded a general view of the whole, which exceedingly pleased him. This was a subject which ensured Marianne's attention, and she was beginning to describe her own admiration of these scenes, and to question him more minutely on the objects that had particularly struck him, when Edward interrupted her by saying, "You must not inquire too far, Marianne. Remember, I have no knowledge in the picturesque, and I shall offend you by my ignorance and want of taste if we come to particulars. I shall call hills steep, which ought to be bold, surfaces strange and uncouth, which ought to be irregular and rugged, and distant objects out of sight, which ought to be only indistinct through the soft medium of a hazy atmosphere. You must be satisfied with such admiration as I can honestly give. I call it a very fine country. The hills are steep, the woods seem full of fine timber, and the valley looks comfortable and snug, with rich meadows and several neat farmhouses scattered here and there. It exactly answers my idea of fine country because it unites beauty with utility. And I dare say it is a picturesque one, too, because you admire it. I can easily believe it to be full of rocks and promontories, grey moss and brushwood, but these are all lost on me. I know nothing of the picturesque." It sounds like you know a lot about the picturesque, mon ami. "I am afraid it is but too true," said Marianne. "But why should you boast of it?" um, can we let's go back. Let's record. "I am afraid it is but too true," said Marianne. "But why should you boast of it?" Marianne. "I suspect," said Eleanor, "that to avoid one kind of affectation, Edward here falls into another. Because he believes many people pretend to more admiration of the beauties of nature than they really feel, and is disgusted with such pretensions, he affects greater indifference and less discrimination in viewing them himself than he possesses. He is fastidious and will have an affectation of his own." Here's what I think. I think Jane Austen is the Aaron Sorkin of the Regency because she writes like so many words so well. There's no way somebody could speak that well, right? We'll see. "It is true," said Marianne, "that admiration of landscape scenery is become a mere jargon. Everybody pretends to feel and tries to describe with taste the elegance of him who first defined what picturesque beauty was. I detest jargon of every kind, and sometimes I have kept my feelings to myself, because I could find no language to describe them in but what was worn and hackneyed, out of all sense and meaning." "I am convinced," said Edward, "that you really feel all the delight in a fine prospect which you profess to feel. But in return, your sister must allow me to feel no more than I profess. I like a fine prospect, but not on picturesque principles. I do not like crooked, twisted, blasted trees. I admire them much more if they are tall, straight, and flourishing. I do not like ruined, tattered cottages. I am not fond of nettles or thistles or heath blossoms. I have more pleasure in a snug farmhouse than a watchtower, and a troop of tidy, happy villagers please me better than the finest banditti in the world. Marianne looked with amazement at Edward, and with compassion at her sister. Eleanor only laughed. The subject continued no farther, and Marianne remained thoughtfully silent, till a new object suddenly engaged her attention. She was sitting by Edward, and in taking his tea from Mrs. Dashwood, his hand passed so directly before her as to make a ring, with a plait of hair in the centre, very conspicuous on one of his fingers. Whose hair is that, Edward? Who's Fanny? Sorry, I'm reading ahead. Okay. Oh shit, who is this? Marianne. I never saw you wear a ring before, Edward, she cried. Is that Fanny's hair? I remember her promising to give you some, but I should have thought her hair had been darker. Marianne spoke inconsiderately what she really felt. But when she saw how much she had pained Edward, her own vexation at her want of thought could not be surpassed by his. He colored very deeply, and giving a momentary glance at Eleanor, he replied, Yes, it is my sister's hair. The setting always casts a different shade on it, you know. Eleanor had met his eye and looked conscious likewise. They're like, oh my God. She's like, why are you wearing that right now? And he's like, sorry. That hair was her own. She was she instantaneously felt as well satisfied as Marianne. The only difference in their conclusion was that what Marianne considered as a free gift from her sister, Eleanor was conscious must have been procured by some theft or contrivance unknown to herself. That's weird. How did he get that? We were just like walking behind her with some scissors. Here I come. Okay. I gotta go. Okay, where was I? This is where the inspiration came from, Edward Scissorhands. How do you do that? You steal a lock of someone's hair while they're not watching. That takes a lot of talent. Whew, okay. She was not in a humor, however, to regard it as an affront, and affecting to take no notice of what had passed by instantly talking of something else, she eternally resolved henceforth to catch every opportunity of eyeing the hair and of satisfying herself, beyond all doubt, that it was exactly the shade of her own. Edward's embarrassment lasted some time, and it ended in an absence of mind still more settled. He was particularly grave the whole morning. Well, that's what happens when you steal someone's hair and don't tell them. Marianne severely censured herself for what she had said, but her own forgiveness that might have been more speedy had she known how little offense it had given her sister. Before the middle of the day, they were visited by Sir John and Mrs. Jennings, who, having heard of the arrival of a gentleman at the cottage, came to take a survey of the guest. With the assistance of his mother-in-law, Sir John was not long in discovering that the name of Ferrars began with an F, and this prepared a future mine of raillery against the devoted Eleanor, which nothing but the newness of their acquaintance with Edward could have prevented from being immediately sprung. But, as it was, she only learned from some very significant looks how far the penetration, founded on Margaret's instructions, extended. Sir John never came to the Dashwoods without either inviting them to dine at the park the next day, or to drink tea with them that evening. On the present occasion, for the better entertainment of their visitor, towards whose amusement he felt himself bound to contribute, he wished to engage them for both. "You must drink tea with us tonight," he said, "for we shall be quite alone, and tomorrow you must absolutely dine with us, for we shall be a large party." Mrs. Jennings enforced the necessity. "And who knows but you may raise a dance," she said. "Dance? I can't. And I can't stand 'em." Sorry. We love singing in the rain. "And who knows but you may raise a dance," she said, "and that will tempt you, Miss Marianne." "A dance?" cried Marianne. "Impossible! Who is to dance?" "Who? Oh." "Who? Why, yourselves and the Carys and the Whitakers, to be sure. What? You thought nobody could dance because a certain person that shall be nameless is gone?" Oh, damn, I forgot what Sir John sounded like. "I wish with all my soul," cried Sir John, "that Willoughby were among us again." Great work. This and Marianne's blushing gave new suspicions to Edward. "And who was Willoughby?" he said in a low voice to Miss Dashwood, by whom he was sitting. She gave him a brief reply. Marianne's countenance was more communicative. Edward saw enough to comprehend not only the meaning of others, but such of Marianne's expressions as he had puzzled him before. And when their visitors left them, he went immediately round to her and said in a whisper, "I have been guessing. Shall I tell you my guess?" "What do you mean?" "I love Edward. He's so nice." "Shall I tell you?" "Certainly." "Well then, I guess that Mr. Willoughby hunts." Marianne was surprised. Oh, he remembers things. Marianne was surprised and confused, yet she could not help smiling at the quiet archness of his manner, and after a moment's silence, "Oh, Edward, how can you? But the time will come, I hope. I am sure you will like him." "I do not doubt it," he replied, rather astonished at her earnestness and warmth, for he had not imagined it to be a joke for the good of her acquaintance in general, founded only on a something or a nothing between Mr. Willoughby and herself. He would not have ventured to mention it. The end of the chapter. Man, I would happily date either Colonel Brandon or Edward. They're both gems. I like that. How old is Edward, do we think? I don't think that's been described. I guess it's not a point of contention. I'm sure he's probably like, what, 29 or something? That's fine. That's cool. Yeah, so that's Sense and Sensibility for today. What a fun read. We have some questions for Edward, but we support him nonetheless. I think Willoughby was 25, but I don't remember an age for Edward. He's probably a little closer in age. But like they weren't supposed to get married too. Men were supposed to wait longer until they got married. So he's probably not like it's probably like I don't know, I want to say like 26 or 27 because I feel like it takes some age to get to that level of like sad boy, but also I'm a sad boy, so like maybe not. All right. Though she is not here to my knowledge, today is Jean's birthday. So I would like to wish her a happy birthday should she come through here. I know what's happening. I'm here for you. Okay, I'm going to log off for today. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow is Monday. So I will be, I agree, Shiv. I will be on at 3. And I will hopefully see you then. Oh, it's so, like, my desk is so, like, dust-free. It's delicious. Okay, I'm leaving. Bye.